Hi, I'm Namiko Suga. I'm the Diversity Coordinator at New York State PTA, and my workshop is on intersectionality. It's discussions on diversity, privilege, and identity. Okay, first of all, what is intersectionality? We have to have the definition, right? It's the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, gender. It's not limited to those though, but as they apply to a given individual or group. And it's regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage, I'm sorry. It was a theory, it's relatively new. It's coined by a legal scholar and activist named Kimberly Crenshaw. And she's done TED Talks, and you can see her speeches and talks online. And intersectionality, to her, it's an acknowledgement of the individual experiences of discrimination, racism, or oppression, and that there are multiple ways that people are marginalized, be it through, like I said, gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, physical ability or disability, religious beliefs, et cetera, et cetera. She coined the term relatively late, 1989, but it's been a concept that's been around for a while, for a couple decades in the second wave of feminism in the 60s, when Black feminists started to call out the inequities in the white middle class mainstream feminist movement. Okay, so without an intersectional lens, events and movements that aim to address injustice towards one group may end up perpetuating systems of inequity towards other groups. It doesn't have to be intentional. Helping one group shouldn't hurt the other. Okay, so this is the biggest thing that's happened this year, besides COVID-19. We know these faces, right? We know George Floyd, we know Ahmaud Arbery, we certainly know Breonna Taylor, and we know about the Black Lives Matter movement and all the protests that happened over the summer. But there are other lives that are Black that matter as well. And you can see in the far right image, trans lives, queer lives, lesbian lives, gay lives, bisexual lives, disabled lives, all Black Lives Matter, right? And I was on Twitter a lot, and this one tweet that I saw, you can't be pro-Black if you don't support Black transgender people, because that does happen a lot. 33 transgender women, mostly Black and some brown, have been murdered in 2020 alone. It's probably gone up by the time you're seeing this. And most haven't been solved, and much less their killers haven't been caught. So unless we value all Black lives, how can we say that Black lives matter? So intersectionality is not just identity. It describes a system and structures that make certain identities more vulnerable than others. And so the importance of determining and recognizing these intersectionalities is really crucial, right? Okay, so some issues to consider, part one. And let's bring this to education and to students, right? Multilingual and multicultural special education. So let's consider this. How is a special needs child assessed when the school staff leading the assessment doesn't speak the language of the child nor of the parent? Now, I know a lot of ENL students, not all, but some are often put into special education classrooms, especially when resources are scarce, right? And they don't have that one-on-one. So how can non-English speaking parents advocate for their child to get them the services they need and are entitled to receive? Also, some parents think that special education is similar to extra help. So, even if their child doesn't need special education, they think, well, it'll give my child a leg up, right? And it goes the other way as well, because gifted is considered special education. I remember my own parents, when I got into the gifted program in elementary school, one day a week, we would be bused to a different school. Well, my parents thought that they would either have to drive me or that I would have to move to the other school. And no one could explain to them that that wasn't the case, right? So for years, they said, no, she doesn't want to, we can't put her in this program. And it was an enrichment program, and I probably would have benefited from it. And do cultural differences and mores or stigma create an obstacle? See, some more issues to consider. So let's talk about mental health and bullying, right? Bullying among Asian American and Pacific Islander students, especially now during COVID, right? There's a rise in attacks due to religion and global phenomenon. 9/11 is the same thing. Muslim students, not even Muslim students. Any student that was darker than white, and some students are reluctant to report issues of bullying to the school or to the parents, right? Because a lot of kids think, rightly or wrongly, that their parents, that they don't speak English, or that their parents are working too hard, and a lot of parents, both of them work. And also there's a cultural consideration too. Like in Japan, there's that, it's called a gambare, right? You have to kind of grin and bear it. And you kind of have to put up with it. And it kind of perpetuates that model minority myth, that you can bully Asians and they're gonna take it kind of thing. And then bullying among LGBTQ students, right? There are studies that said over 80% experience harassment at school, but 60% of those kids never report any instances of bullying. And that suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people ages 10 to 24, right? And LGB youth seriously contemplate suicide at almost 3 times the rate of heterosexual youth. Notice I didn't put the T in there because there isn't much of a comprehensive study on transgender youth and suicide, but there is studies done on adults reporting back to their adolescents. 40% of transgender adults reported having made a suicide attempt. Now, there's a part 3 of more issues to consider, and this is where we bring in the PTA. So let's think about membership. That's something that's been on all of our minds, right? But there are financial disparities. Membership, you may think, oh, it's $12, $15, whatever. That's not affordable to some people, right? There's also cultural ignorance. I had a co-president at my elementary school. She came here from the Ukraine when she was 17. She had no idea what a PTA was. And, she learned, but there's a lot of parents and guardians that don't know, who've never had or never experienced anything like the PTA, right? And the language used when signing up isn't inclusionary. Language is a huge obstacle. And we are working on, alleviating some of the obstacles at New York State PTA. Same thing with volunteering. When you're looking for volunteers, there's a language barrier, right? And some parents, they just don't see the value in volunteering. They want to support their children, of course, but not through the way that you want them to support the children, right? And there's also a lack of time and money. Now, for membership, this is where I'm going to call out Member Hub. And I do know that New York State PTA is also working on this. I don't know if you've ever, well, hopefully you have, when you've signed up for membership for Member Hub, they ask you whether you're male or female, or you prefer not to answer. Now, this binary model is a little outdated. It's exclusionary implicit bias, right? Because what if I'm non-binary, but I want to tell you and I prefer to answer that I'm non-binary? I don't have that choice. It's just something to consider. So then that's the question, right? What can I do? So some tips on working towards intersectional equity. Obviously, recognize that a monolith doesn't exist, right? Asia is a huge continent. Africa is a huge continent. There's billions of people. People who may share one intersectional identity will have still different experiences based on their race, religion, ethnicity, etc. And people's identities change over time, right? What their identity is currently is most important. Transgender people may switch pronouns. Heterosexual cisgender people may switch pronouns. Closeted people come out, right? People convert to a different religion. Their financial situations may change. People may become disabled. I mean, the list goes on, right? But you want to avoid oversimplified and exclusionary language. Just a friend of mine just recently on Facebook talked about having to protect women's rights and, something about, like, she mentioned like women's and sex organs, right? Not all women have the same sex organs, nor is the ability to bear children the defining characteristic of womanhood, right? You should kind of do research on commonly accepted terms. The best way to do it is if you meet someone and say, a lot of people now, especially online, will tell you what their pronouns are, what they prefer, what they want to be called. You can also research commonly accepted terms used by the community because identity words change, right? One example I can think of is differently abled. That was coined in the 90s, and some people were using it. Some people find that problematic, like disabled people find it problematic, and they find no issue with calling themselves disabled. But, you can't just assume one person will be okay with it and one person won't be okay with it. Also, POC, a person of color. That used to be like the one lump identity for like Black people, Asian people, Indigenous people. Now I've been seeing BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color. So again, it just kind of breaks it down a little bit more. And then personally, look at the spaces that you occupy. Like, how inclusionary is your workspace, your volunteer organization, your own child's school district or unit? Who are the leaders versus the general members in that space? I do want to make a little caveat. I know you want to make your leaders reflect your membership, right? But like in my community, we had a large Asian population. And again, like, the language barrier is a big obstacle. There's some people don't know what the PTA does. And I did find that, we were trying so hard to get these Chinese parents to come and volunteer and be more, what we thought was more supportive. But they just wanted to support the PTA in their own way. We had staff appreciation, and they went all for that, because they value their child's education like all parents do. But that was the way that they wanted to support the PTA, and that's okay. You can't be angry at someone for not wanting to step up if that's just not what they're comfortable doing. Okay, so what else can you do? Speaking of space, we have the New York State PTA Diversity, Inclusion, and Outreach Facebook group. The link is right there. I'll leave it up a little bit so you can write it down. I think we're going to make this PowerPoint presentation available to people. I'm not sure, but I will look at that. And National PTA also has their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I can, you can email me and I will put you in touch with the right people and send you the links for that as well. So if there's any questions, please put it in the chat box. And thank you very much.